the wronged party that made use of this right, and many times also young ambitious men that were candidate to the magistrature and that found there a means to become known. So the tribune Pisão, introduced another innovation. The judgment of crimes was entrusted not to only a judge, like in a civil manner, but to a jury presided by a praetor, concilium publicum. This jury was chosen in the senatorial order and sorted from a general list established by the urban praetor. The accuser and the accused could alternately refuse them until they had reached the number required by law. And this is still done in our criminal courts regarding only murder, right? Regarding only murder. So the institution of the jury was extended with some difference in detail to crimes that were not of the concussion. These juries slowly became permanent. They started to be called questiones perpetui. They were presided either by a special praetor or by one of the jury, invested by an analogous power. The instituted jury, by law, on murder was in reason of the frequency of this crime, divided in several sections, affected by the ways the murder was committed, like the case of murders by poisoning. In the middle of the 1st century before Christ in Rome, they created a new section to judge the crimes committed against a near relative. And is before this section that Cicero defended Sexto Roscius. The composition of the criminal jury was for several times changed. The senators excluded by Gracco were reestablished by Sylla in 81. 10 years later, in virtue of the Aurelia law in the 70s, the general list of jury would only comprehend a third of the senators. The two other thirds are reserved to there are Roman knights and the tribunes of the erario, tribuni erari. Other modifications were made later on. We highlight that the process of when the process of Sexto Rossio happened in the 80s, the jury comprehended only members of the senatorial order. It was presided by the praetor Fanio, that had before presided one of the sections of the same jury in the quality of quaestor and of judge, iudex. He is the one who received the nominal accusation, through which one opens the criminal process. Thus, the accusator notifies to the president of the jury or the competent section the name of the accused, and he requires of it an inscription on the list of the case to submit to the jury. The role of the president consisted in controlling the instruction done by the accuser and sorting out the jury and make them swear to do their duty, and then to set the date of the audience. On the fixed date, he would preside the debates, and after hearing the lawyer, cause patronus, and the witnesses, he would deliberate with the jury and would collect their votes. After having made them make a new juramento, agora esqueci. Oath, a new oath, attesting that this vote was according to his personal conviction. The decision was taken by the majority of the votes expressed. What was the crime of parricide? Cicero announces in the beginning of his defense, de parricidio causa dicitur. I am defending a cause of parricide. This is the accusation that weighs over Sextus Roscius. Cicero, in his defense, says loud and clear the scheme involving the two Roscios and Silas freedman, Crisogono, together to take possession of the deceased possessions. And for this, he demonstrates the gravity of the accusation done to the son. Cicero goes to the lengths of developing a long digression on the penalty that will suffer young Roscio if he is condemned, using long passages and strong images with the aim of making the public emotional with this grotesque vision that is the accusation. So he talks about as an act of rare violence. He uses the words that go back to the sacred and gravest of aberrations of madness and anger, furor et amentia, that can fall to a man, that can come to a man. It makes him into a beast and deprived of a soul. Right. So, he talks about the supplicio, the terrible punishment given to the parricides, that the guilty person was conducted to a prison where they covered his head with a wolf head. In the day of the execution, he was painted red and put in a big sack of leather, together with several animals, a dog, a rooster, a snake, and a monkey. And at the end of everything, he's thrown in the sea or in the Tiber, according to the Code of Justinian, right? And the magistrate mentions that all his students, when they hear this story, ask him, how could they get a monkey in ancient Rome? Was the question that they ask us, where does the monkey come from? Anyway, the inclusion of several animals creates a symbolic signification in the execution. One does not know for certain when and why the animals were included in punishment of the parricide crime. They are animals that belong to the world of the infernal divinities. This crime is considered a crime against man and against the gods. The accused is no longer considered human. Now he makes a comparison with the recent jurisprudence. So, Cicero's defense starts with an introduction where he justifies his position of Sextus Roscio's defendant, in the sense that only a beginner could do it because of the political difficulties existent at that time. He presents right afterwards the character of Crisogono, Silas freedman, as the one behind the official accusator, Erusio. He asks the comprehension of the president of the jury, Fanio, and of jurors, Captatio Benevolentia, because even though he's young, he is determined to fulfill his duty. And he then alerts the importance of them being firm and impartial, in the measure that the true guilty parties are the accusers. He makes a presentation of the victim, the father of his client, his sympathy for nobility, and his differences with Magno and Capito. He shows how these associated with Chrysogonus to steal the properties of the victim. He shows how the villains tried to murder his client, but that he took refuge in Rome, and no other option being left unless accuse him of parricide. He then announces his plan to refute the accusation of Erusio, to denounce Magno and Capito, and to bring to light all the responsibility of Chrysogonus. Cicero refutes the accusation of parricide. He contests that the arguments given by Erusio, and he shows that his client had no reason to kill his own father. Right? Then he accuses Magno and Capito of having ordered to kill his client's father. And then he refers to the famous formula of Cassius, cui bono, to whom it does the crime favor, a formula we use to this day. And he demonstrates the indications that point to the real guilty parties. The trip of Glaucia to Ameria in the night of the crime, the connection between Capito and Crisogono, and his role in the delegation sent to Volterra, his betrayal, and the absence of fides of the two men, the denial of capital, who refused to interrogate the slaves that were with the victim at the night of the crime, the illegality of the sale of the properties of the victim, while the beneficiary would be Chrysogonus. The lie, the dirty lie, because the victim was never prescripted. He denounces the freedman as the head of the scheme that involved the murder of the victim, his untimely prescription, the selling of his properties, and the false accusation of parricide against his son. In the conclusion of the discourse, he appeals to the pacification of this stormy time. He explained that his client doesn't ask more than his freedom. And while to Chrysogonus that he content himself with the illegally gotten properties. As final proof of the innocence of his client, he demonstrates that he was being supported by Cecilia Metella and Messala, and their auctoritas are standing by themselves. At the end, he tells the judges that they shouldn't be afraid of making Sila angry or unpleased Sila. They need to resist the facility of a cruel trial that inaugurates a new form of prescription. He transformed the cause of his client in a cause for the whole state that needs to get out of the infernal circle of crudelitas to find again the way of humanitas. So the conclusion is that Cicero's ability conducts the absolution of the young Rossio. The analysis of Cicero's defense under the aspect of its argumentation was already done in a study made by Professora Claudia, already mentioned, and used as basis for this work. This study takes care of the importance in the form of the discourse, a complexio, when Cicero presents two possibilities to the trial, to the people who are trying the accused, being that any of the two that is followed will be beneficial for his line of defense. Thus, the argumentation form surpasses the content through this method. What we can highlight, there is an anguish of people who are trying a case like this, is that the truth will never be truly known. Our Roman Germanic juridical tradition in the penal process, has as principle, general principle, the search for the real truth. That means to know what really happened. On the other hand, the Anglo-Saxon system is content with the formal truth, that is, to know what the process can show. Thus, the discussion that always permeated the jury trials in the cases of crime against life, whether what we call indiciary evidence of proof is valid. Well, Cicero uses the indiciary proof to establish what he calls truth. That is, the conspiration between Magno, Capito, and Chrysogonus to take power of the properties of old Rossio. In this intellective construction, Cicero uses the formula of Cassius, cui bono, to whom does the crime benefit, and that those are indiciary evidence proofs, those who conduct the jury to a determined conclusion, highlighted in the second argumentative line of Cicero, and point to the true authors of the crime if the jury follows his interpretations of the proof, of the evidence. He highlights still the search of Cicero for the empathy of the jurors for his client, and the importance of the judicant function to the construction of his defense. Finally, identifying the position of the fight of the defense with the position of the fight for state turned to humanity and not to cruelty, is a resource that sensibilizes the jurors and they feel belonging to this state protector of the humanities. Thus, the importance also of the political contextualization made by the defensor of the young Rossio. Thank you.
Obrigada, Su. Eu abro, então, para questões.
Enfim,
Tá bom.
uma pergunta feita pela professora Regina ao lado do professor Fábio Faversani, e eu estou me sentindo assim numa banca de doutorado. Uma banca de história. Se fosse de direito... Não, mas, na realidade, com certeza, Cícero negocia, né, um acordo. Ele tem uma maleabilidade aí para poder... Ele estava buscando a absolvição do cliente dele para não ser condenado àquele suplício que seria o suplício da pena aplicada para os parricidas, né, e da forma que é, né, que contamina a família toda, né, contamina tudo. Então, ele usou um meio de conseguir atingir essa finalidade dele, o que cada vez mais se aproxima, se for possível fazer essa apropriação, com o nosso sistema processual penal, né, que é um sistema processual penal anglo-saxão, a possibilidade de negociação, do bargaining, né, que é muito comum, e que o nosso sistema atualmente está indo para o mesmo modelo, a possibilidade de aplicar penas menores e dar vantagens ao criminoso, à vítima, fazer um acordo com o Estado, o que até pouco tempo atrás, vamos dizer, até 5 anos atrás, seria absolutamente impossível.
Só um complemento, antes de passar para a Su, também lembrando que esses tribunais estavam sob observação, estavam recentes, né, novamente, depois de um período, um restabelecimento. E muita gente ali dos jurados, tinha se beneficiado das prescrições. Se ele mexe muito nisso, os jurados vão ficar contra ele, porque vão ter que devolver suas... Então, ele não quer mexer na questão... Ele também não queria mexer nas prescrições, a meu ver. Nem os acusadores, nem Cícero na defesa. Ninguém quer mexer nessas prescrições. E muita gente
nem tão
tinha
pouco
bens
acusador também, né? Como a professora Cláudia falou, o próprio Eurúcio não traz a questão da
nada.
prescrição, porque senão até nem justificaria o julgamento em si, né? Ninguém toca
aí
nesse
pra
assunto. É um
todo
acordo, né? Um
até
acordo
para os
tácito, né?
jurados.
A justiça ali não
É um tipo de justiça, digamos, que é para todos ali, né? Ok? Surge.
So